All right, so we're in the book of Ruth, and I invite you to turn there. We started this last week. We're looking at the book of Ruth through a few different lenses. As we're looking at the book of Ruth, we looked at it primarily through the lens of Naomi last week. And I told you I had to do a little bit more work last week because I kind of had to tell the whole story. Hopefully you're familiar now with the story of Ruth. If you weren't here last week, I'll try and catch us up a little bit as we go. But today we're going to look more through the lens of Ruth and look at how she might have received some of the things that were going on and how she might have interacted in her own heart and how she might have seen God in some of that. And let me again remind us why we're doing Ruth. One is because we felt like God put Ruth on our hearts through several different avenues, and the same verses kept coming up for different people. And even at ministry night, I think it was, we had a leadership meeting earlier that day, and I'm talking to the leadership team and saying, hey, where do you think we should go after Philippians? And one of the guys had a verse from Ruth just pop in his mind. He kind of quoted this verse from Ruth, and he said, I think we're supposed to be in Ruth. And then at ministry night, that night, I wasn't there, but Chris Hanger was, he's on our leadership team. He said that when someone was ministering to someone else in the congregation and listened to the Lord about how to encourage them, the exact same verse of Ruth came up. The person quoted this verse of Ruth, not knowing what had been said in our leadership team. And that, along with a couple other things, we just really felt like the Lord wants us in Ruth. And so I just want you to have a sense of expectation. What does the Lord really want to say to you or to me through this? And I found the Lord speaking directly to me in my life through it. The other thing is that we've done James, we've done Philippians, now we're doing Ruth. And I know it's another book about pain a little bit. And I really wasn't interested in doing another book on pain. But what Ruth does is it gives us the ability to see someone living it out. So the truths that are found in James and the truths that are found in Philippians, the story of Ruth lives it out in front of us. And so sometimes you read the letters like James and Philippians, you're like, okay, that's great, that's teaching. And we seek to try and apply it. When you have story and you watch people live it out in front of us, we get a better idea about how to apply it. And so by looking at the story of Ruth, what we're really doing is getting a chance to see how to apply this to our lives. And whenever you study story, I want you to know this. Kind of what we do and kind of how I prepare and how I'd like you to prepare in the future if you're reading stories in the Bible, is you have to connect with it in a different way. You have to do three things in my mind. If you do these three things, you begin to sink into the story and have God reveal to us what he wants us to know. First thing we do is we paint a picture. And so we've got a story, we want to paint a picture, and we want to paint a picture like what it would be like to be in that scene, what it would feel like, what the sights are, what the sounds are, what the smells are, what the characters are like. What does it feel like? And when we're in a story, we have to feel the story. The second thing we need to do is put ourselves in the shoes of the different characters. What would it feel like to be them? What would it be like to be them in that circumstance? And to use some of our imagination and to feel what it was like to be Ruth in this instance and to be Ruth in this story. When you start to put yourself in the shoes of Ruth, all of a sudden it comes to life for us because all of a sudden we can place ourselves there and then we can start to see how that truth impacts us. The third thing we do is we look for a principle. It's a timeless truth. It's something that was true in their day will be true in our day also. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. We did that last week with Naomi. We're going to do that this week with Ruth. We're going to try and paint the picture a little bit. We're going to try and put ourselves in her shoes a little bit. There'll be some times where we'll have to use our imagination a little bit. What would it have been like to feel that or to experience that? And hopefully all that makes it come to life. So here we go. Ruth chapter 1, starting in verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Pathrites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. In the story of Naomi, or the story of Ruth, as it's called, Naomi and her husband left Israel because there's a famine. They left because of a hardship. And they left with hope saying we could survive if we go to Moab. So they set off on a journey. And they go off on this journey, and as they do, there's this hope. They go off as a family, husband and wife, and 2 sons. While there, Naomi's husband dies. Can you imagine what that would be like? You are going there. Elimelech, your husband, is taking you there to be safe, to be protected, to be provided for, and to survive. And your hope in leaving is you're going to survive. But in that land, Elimelech dies. What would that like to be Naomi? She's got 2 sons. We don't know how old the sons are. It doesn't really tell us. There isn't even really a clue necessarily. We just know that she had 2 sons. All of a sudden, she's a single mom. Raising two boys. I don't know how old they were. They could have been teenagers. They might have been a little bit older or even younger. I don't know. But she's a single mom. And then it goes on and it says that these 2 sons, they married Moabite women. So eventually they get old enough of age and they marry 2 Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. And after they lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. So we talked about this last week. She's without. She has this phrase that she's going to say later is that I went away full. I went away with a husband. I went away with 2 sons. I went away full. And she's going to return to Israel. And when she returns, she comes back empty, as she says it. Verse 6, when she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home. With her daughter-in-laws, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud, and she said to her, we will go back with you to your people. But Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons? Who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. And if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight, and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it's more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me. At this, they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. All right, so we want to paint the picture a little bit, and we want to put ourselves in Ruth's shoes. And so here's the deal. Naomi's life is rocked. Naomi's life is shattered. Naomi's life has nothing in it that she recognizes and nothing that she hoped. Everything she hoped for is gone. Remember, she left to survive, and she's going to come back by herself. I don't know what the conversations were like when they decided to go to Moab. I don't know what it was like with the community there around when Elimelech and Naomi said, hey, we're out, we're going to Moab, we're going to survive this famine. I don't know what it was like. I don't know if people are like, really, you're going to go to Moab? See, Moab is not a great place for an Israelite person to go. Like, Moab is a group of people that they don't like. Moab is a group of people that worship different gods. Moab is a people that God, from their perspective, judges. And so I just wonder what it was like in the conversations when they set off. What's it like to come back empty and to come back without sons, to come out without your husband, and to walk back down that road? That must have been hard. But it also must have been hard for Ruth. Because here's the deal. Ruth is married to one of her 2 sons. She loses her husband. When she loses her husband, she is connected to Naomi. Why is she connected to Naomi? Because she was married to one of her sons. Orpah, likewise, was married to one of her sons. So they have a connection to Naomi. Now, in here is a thing that to us seems a little curious, because basically Naomi is saying, Ruth, you don't want to come back with me. Orpah, you don't want to come back with me. Because if you come back with me, I've got nothing. I have no sons. I'm too old. I'm not going to get married again. Even if I did, would you wait for me to have a son, for that son to grow up, for you to marry? And that seems a little odd to us in our culture. Like, what's going on with that? What's going on with that is this, is that lines and heritage lines are so important in that culture that when you marry in, you're committed to carrying on the line of the husband. And so, or the line of Elimelech, the grandfather. And so when her husband dies, when Ruth's husband dies, she's still connected to Naomi, and she has this responsibility through this connection to carry on the line of Elimelech and her husband and to carry it on. So she would wait through this commitment for Naomi to have another son, for him to rise up. She's like, why would you do that? So the reality is what Naomi is saying is, I have nothing for you. I have no hope. I have a bitter life. You have no hope if you come with me. I'm releasing you. Go back to your gods. Go back to your people. Go back, get a husband from your own people. Go get your own life. Orpah hears that. She's like, you're right, I'm out. So she took it. And you can understand why Orpah would take that when you start to put yourself in Ruth's shoes and ask this question. What would it be like for Ruth to stay connected to Naomi? She's now saying, I have no hope of a future. I have no hope of a husband. I have no hope of a family. I have no hope of any of my dreams being fulfilled. I have nothing. But I made a commitment to you. I'm going to keep it. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Where you go, I will go. And what Ruth is saying is, I don't really care what it costs me, but I'm going to love you. I don't care what it costs me, I'm going to be connected to you. I don't care what it costs me, I'm going to serve you. And what Ruth does is she's not thinking about herself, she's thinking about Naomi. Now, what's remarkable about that, both women have lost husbands. Ruth is saying all this not from a perspective of being well, she's saying it from a perspective of grieving. She's saying it from a perspective of loss. She's saying it from a perspective of not having something in her life and not having a hope of a future. Both women are virtually in the same position. The only difference is Naomi has experienced the loss of 2 sons and a husband. Ruth has experienced the loss of a husband. But the reality is she's also lost unborn children. So it's a loss of a dream. And when Ruth says, I'm going to go with you, what is she doing? She's saying, you matter more than me. I'm going to love you no matter what it costs me. And I'm not going to concern myself with what I don't get. I am with you, I am for you, and I'm going to see you through this journey. What's interesting about that also is if you look at Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, there's a little thing that's important. It says, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. Now, why is it important for us to know that? It wants us to know what's happening. It wants us to know the setting of this. And it's saying this, in the days the judges ruled and there was a famine in the land. And here's what you need to know about Judges. If you've ever read through the book of Judges, there is a phrase or a verse that repeats 4 times. It says it 4 different times in the book of Judges. It's really important. It's one of the things that God wants us to know very much from the book of Judges. If it's going to say it 4 times, it's saying, pay attention to this. And here's what it says 4 times. Everyone did as he saw fit. The entire culture of Israel is everyone does as he sees fit. It says in those days there was no king and everyone did as he saw fit. And so what it really means is like people are like, I don't care about you. I'm going to do what I want. I don't care about what God might say. I'm going to do what I want. The only thing that's king in the days of Judges is me. And I'm going to dictate my life around me. I'm going to make decisions around me. I'm going to do what I want, what I like, and it doesn't matter about anyone else around me. In those days, Ruth lives like this. It's an amazing story that Ruth, a Moabite woman, not an Israelite, a woman that they would look down upon, A Moabite woman would display what it looks like to say, in my life, I will do as God sees fit, not as I see fit. It's remarkable. Also, in that society, what's also amazing about it, and is I love how God does this. He lifts up and elevates a woman to say, you want to know what I look like? Look at her. You want to know what my love looks like? Look at her. You want to know what sacrifice looks like? Look at her. He lifts up Ruth and says, this is what you should look like. And it says in another place that the eyes of the Lord search to and fro, looking for someone he can strongly support. When he's looking to and fro, you know what he sees? He sees a woman who is a Moabite who has his heart. And he says, be like that woman. Pay attention to her. Here's a woman who's lost her husband. And here's a woman who's lost the opportunity to have children. And she says, I'm not going to do as I see fit. See, Orpah, no judgment here, but Orpah does as she sees fit. And Ruth does as she believes God sees fit. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Where you go, I will go. And she sets off. When they get back, the women see Naomi coming down the dirt, dusty road. They say, could that be Naomi? Could that be Naomi? And they greet her, and Naomi says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for that's what I am. I'm bitter. And Mara means bitterness. Naomi means pleasant. I'm not pleasant, I'm bitter. This is where Naomi's at. If you've ever been around people who are depressed, if you've ever been around people where their life is crashing around them, they're not pleasant to be around. They're not fun to be around. They don't buoy your spirits. They don't make the time just feel overjoyed. They pull us down. And they tend to bring us to the place that they're in. Naomi is in that place of bitterness, and Ruth is there with her. Ruth wakes up one day and says, you know what, Naomi, we're going to starve. This is in chapter 2. She says, we're going to starve. I'm going to go get us some food. I'm going to go get us some food. Naomi is such a depressed state, as I mentioned last week. She's not even thinking about food. When people are depressed, they don't think about the things of life that sustain life because they really don't even want it to continue. And so Ruth says to her, hey, look, I'm going to go get some food for us. This is not Ruth's hometown. Ruth is a Moabite woman. She doesn't know anybody there. And she says, you're not going to do it. I better do it. And so she gets up and she begins to go to a field to try and get some food. We talked about this last week. She's going to go to a field and she's going to glean from it. And what they did is during harvest time, the person who owns the land would have a group of harvesters who would come and they'd harvest the whole land. Behind the harvesters would be a group of women they would call servant girls who belonged to the household who would come and they would get the things that the harvesters missed. Behind that is a group of women who are, or it could be men as well, but people who are orphans and people who are widows. They would come by and they would get the scraps. So harvesters, servant girls, widows, and orphans. And so Ruth is going to go to a field. Ruth goes to a field and she's going to try to get some fruit from. There's not hope of getting a lot of food. There's just hope of getting some food. Now, what I want you to do, though, is think about what it'd be like to be a Moabite woman going to a field. It's one thing to be a widow going to a field. It's another thing to be a Moabite woman going to a field. What would that feel like? I want you to put yourself in her shoes as you start to make your way towards a field, knowing that you don't look like these people, knowing that you stand out, knowing that you might be ridiculed, knowing that you might find harshness, knowing you might find people treating you poorly because you're a Moabite woman. What would it be like to go to that field? What would it be like to be willing to put yourself in that spot? So here's what she's saying to Naomi. I don't care if I'm ridiculed. I'll serve you. I don't care if something bad happens to me or if I put myself in a risky spot. I'm going to take care of you. I don't care if I'm harassed. I don't care if I'm looked down upon. I don't care if I stand out. I'm going to love on you and care for you and provide for you in the way you can't for yourself. This is what it means to love someone in a hard place. Now, the other part about this is think about this. Have you ever been around people who are having life crash around them? They're not just depressed oftentimes, they're usually angry. And people who are like that usually will lash out at you and will oftentimes take it out on you. It's called taking your anger and projecting it on someone else. My guess is, I don't know, but there's nothing here that would tell me that this happened. Just life tells me it probably happened. I'm guessing with how bitter Naomi was, she's probably biting towards Ruth. Twice she told her, don't come with me. What would it be like to do this for a person who's hurting? And then what's it like to do it for a person in your own family who's hurting? Because when you're doing it for a family member who's hurting, often they are the ones who have the defenses down because of your relationship with you, and they're the ones who are usually harsher with you. When someone is in great pain in a family scenario, they tend to lash out even more at someone who's trying to love on and care for them. Ruth, regardless of all of this, is going to love on Naomi. And she puts herself in a risky spot, in a humiliating spot, in a place to potentially be ridiculed and harassed. And she does this all to love on Naomi. Chapter 2, verse 1 says, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech, a man of standing whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields, pick up the leftover grain behind anyone whose eyes I find favor. And Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. So she went out and began to glean the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in the field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. I mentioned this last week, but I just want to point this out again. Ruth says to Naomi, I'm going to go get some food, and Naomi doesn't tell her where to go. She went to any field. She had no idea what she was going to find. She did not get directed to Boaz's field. She did not get directed to a field where someone might look out for her and protect her, someone who was in Naomi's line. She didn't even think about Ruth in any way. She allowed her to go into a very dangerous situation, and Ruth is going there not knowing where she's going at all. But as it turns out, she found herself in that field. God was protecting her because I think God was at the center of what she was doing. Ruth was trying to listen to the Lord. It doesn't really say it, but there's a lot of stuff in the story that indicates that. She's trying to follow after God, and God leads her to a place that's safe. Here's the deal. If you're going to love on people the way God's prompting you, trust him to protect you too. Even if it looks like it might be dangerous for you, just trust him to protect as long as you're listening to him. And Ruth just really feels like this is where God's leading her. And as it turns out, she finds herself in a safe place. But she doesn't know that. She has no idea who Boaz is. I just want to draw your attention to that. She has no idea. It just says, as it turns out. We know. We, as the reader, we get the clue that Boaz is safe. She doesn't. All right, so here's what we're going to continue to read and see. Just then, verse 4, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you, they called back. And Boaz asked the foreman of his harvesters, whose young woman is that? The foreman replied, she's the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went into the field and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. Verse 8, so Boaz said to Ruth, stop there. Again, put ourselves in the shoes of Ruth. She had to go to this field. She doesn't even know where she's at. She says, hey, could I glean here? When she's saying, can I glean here, she's not coming there just as a widow. She's coming there looking different than everybody else. And she's like, hey, look, I know everybody knows who I am. I'm the Moabite woman. I know it. You know it. Could I glean here? The risk in doing that is high. Some reason, he smiles upon her and lets her do it. There's nothing in the Jewish law that would say she'd need to do that. But he lets her do it. Then Boaz shows up. When Boaz shows up, it says that he greeted them all. He said, the Lord bless you. And they said, the Lord bless you, right? So now everybody is responding. This would draw Ruth's attention to this is an important man. My guess is he's the owner of the property. She does not know who Boaz is. She's putting this together. Hey, this is the guy who owns the land. Now, if you are Ruth and you're watching what's happening, you're seeing that and you're drawn to how important he is. And then you're seeing Boaz talk to the man you went and asked for permission. If he is talking to one on permission, you got to put yourself in his shoes, and you're kind of off on the side here a little bit. and you're watching this happen, and Boaz is talking to the guy who gave you permission. It's a conversation going on for some time, and my guess is Boaz is like, hey, who's that? Or at some point, whether Boaz pointed or the foreman pointed, I bet you one of them said, oh, that's the Moabitess. Okay, put yourself in your shoes. If you don't know what the conversation is, but you can see they're talking, and you can see them pointing, and you know they're talking about you, how do you feel? And then it says Boaz comes up to her and says something. How would you feel when you watch Boaz approach you? What will be running through your heart and your mind? What fears might be present? Is he going to ask you to leave, or worse? Is he going to make you give it all back? What's going to happen as he approaches you? See, that moment is a pregnant moment. It's one filled with a lot of emotions in it that we can easily pass by. But Ruth is in that place of going, I don't know what's going to come out of his mouth. I don't even know who this guy is. He's been talking about me. Here he comes. We don't know what's going to happen. Well, Boaz says this, verse 8. So Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field. Doesn't sound great yet. Don't go could be, and don't come here. You have to receive it in the way a person would actually receive this initially, and our thought patterns from that. It says, don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Whew. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting, and follow along after the girls. I have told you that men are not to touch you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled. She's a Moabite woman, and she can go get a drink from the water jars they fill? She's a Moabite woman, and she can stay? She's a Moabite woman, and the men are supposed to protect me? What? Like, that's got to be really relieving. And it goes on. At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, why have I found such favor in your eyes that you would notice me, a foreigner? And Boaz replied, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know. May the Lord repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. You know what stands out to me about that? What has he heard about Ruth? And here's the thing. If he's heard about her, everybody's talking about her. So everybody's been talking about her. Here's what he's heard. I've been told all about what you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. Everything up till now has been really about the death of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon, and Naomi's perspective. You know what Boaz recognizes? I see what you did for your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know. He's the first person to actually recognize what's going on in Ruth's world. I got to imagine that felt really comforting. But he says to her, may the Lord repay you for what you've done. And I want to draw your attention to that because oftentimes if we feel like we've done something for someone, if we feel like we've gone out of our way and we've laid down our lives for someone, what are we looking for them to do? Eventually, we're looking for them to repay us. It's like, look at all I've done for you. Look at all the sacrifices I've done. When are you going to throw me a bone? Or very often, we're looking for someone else to do something for us. And what Boaz is saying, may the Lord repay you. Not Naomi, may the Lord repay you. And may the Lord repay you for what you've done, and may you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. And just take notice of under whose wings you've come to take refuge. And what's interesting to me about that is, while he's saying all this, he's saying, may the Lord protect you, may the Lord bless you, may the Lord be your favorite, may the Lord. Boaz is a kinsman redeemer in the line of Elimelech. He's doing certain things. He is helping her, and he's putting her in the field, and he's helping her. But he's just saying, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord protect you. And it's under his wings that you're coming. Just want to draw your attention to that. Here's what happens after that. Ruth, as you know from last week, she comes back with like 20 to 50 pounds of grain, way more than she should have had. And Naomi's like, where have you been? And she tells her, like, I've been in the field of Boaz. And Naomi's like, wow, he's in our line. You should keep going there because you go somewhere else, you can get hurt. It's the first time that Naomi even recognizes there's danger to Ruth. But what we see is this. In chapter 3, verse 1, is the first time that Naomi begins to notice the pain that Ruth's in. Naomi has been so impacted by her own pain, she can't see Ruth for the exception of just go home. She doesn't try to comfort her. She doesn't try to provide for her. She doesn't try to do anything for her. All she is concerned about is her own pain. For 2 chapters, all Ruth does is love on her in that place. All Ruth does is sacrifice her life for her in that place. All Ruth does is lay down every aspect and dream for Naomi so Naomi can get out of the pit that she's in. That love that she has and that serving of her, what it does for her is it melts Naomi's heart. And here's a principle. I know you and I can be around some people that are Naomi's. And I know it can be hard to love someone in a sacrificial way. I know it can be hard to love someone in an unconditional way. I know it's hard to lay down and sacrifice for people when there's nothing in return. But eventually, that kind of love will melt the hardest of hearts. It took a while, but Naomi's heart started to melt. Ruth never gets bitter. Naomi is, but Ruth has a similar experience, but she doesn't get bitter. And because she doesn't get bitter, because she stays connected to God and she loves the way God does, Naomi's heart begins to melt. If you are around a person who is struggling, who's had a hard time, whose life feels shattered, who is depressed, who is hurting, who can't think of you, don't look for them to repay you. We love not because they love us. We love because the Lord loves us. And what Boaz is recognizes, may the Lord bless you. Under his wings you have come under. May the Lord repay you. Look for the Lord to repay you instead of someone else. Look for the Lord to repay you for the kindness you show to someone instead of someone else reciprocating it. If you're looking for someone else to reciprocate it, you will become bitter like the other person. It's a chance for us to move into bitterness or to stay out of bitterness when the audience is the Lord instead of the audience the person. See, Naomi is so bitter, she could have turned Ruth into a bitter woman. But Ruth stayed connected with the Lord in such a way that she's saying, I'm coming underneath your wings, and I'm looking for you to repay me, not her. And because of that, she can love in this way. If you and I are having a hard time loving people who are in a hard place, then it may be we're looking for them to repay us instead of God. Change our perspective and look for the Lord to repay us instead of someone else. It's the only way to stay clear of the bitterness. But Ruth stays clear of it. I want to draw your attention to Ruth chapter 3, verse 9. I told the story. I'm going to catch this up. I'm going to fill in the gaps here. Basically, when Naomi says, why have I not thought about you? Oh my gosh, Boaz, he is in our line. He's a kinsman redeemer. You know what Boaz is supposed to do? He's supposed to make sure my husband's line continues. This is the way God's law had provided. And so you know what I should be doing? I should be connecting you with Boaz. Why have I not tried to find a home for you? Why have I not tried to find a husband for you? Why have I not cared for you? So Naomi's heart gets melted by Ruth's love. And then Naomi says, hey, I need to help you out. So what she does is says, hey, here's the deal. We're at the end of the harvest. And you know what Boaz is going to be doing? He's going to be collecting all the grain in this room. And what you need to do is go put on your finest clothes. Oh, let's put on the best perfume. And I want you to go lay down at Boaz's feet while he's sleeping in that room. And when he wakes, he'll know what to do and he'll tell you what to do. And so Naomi is putting Ruth in a position for Elimelech to respond to her and to begin to protect her in a different way. So Ruth goes out, she's all dolled up, she's got her perfume on, and it says that she lifts the covers off of his feet. And it can be feet, it could be legs, it can be a couple different things, but she lifts it. And she lays at his feet. He's already asleep. It says he's had some wine and stuff like that. He's out. And this is lifted, and she's laying at his feet. He wakes up a little startled. He's like, who is this? Who is this at my feet? I went to bed, there's nobody here, now there's someone here, what's going on? And he says, verse 9, who are you? And she says, I'm your servant Ruth. She says, spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer. I want to draw your attention to that. What is she saying? Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer. The whole reason for lifting this off of the legs is to get this garment to be loose. And she's saying, look, I want you to take that. Don't put it back over your feet. Don't put it back over your legs. Put it over me. We have to remember chapter 2. See, in chapter 2, Boaz said, may the Lord repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come to take refuge. What he is saying is, may God protect you. And again, under whose wings? If you're coming under someone's wings, you're being covered. And it's just saying, if you're under God's wings, he's going to cover you, he's going to protect you, he's going to pull you in, he's going to comfort you, he's going to do all these things. May he bless you and may he take care of you under his wings that you've come. And she says to him a chapter later, spread the corner of your garment over me. And here's what I think she's saying to him. It's not good enough to say, God, take care of you. Take care of me. And I think in a rudimentary way, she's saying this. She's saying, hey, look, I know you said, hey, may God protect me. Boaz, be God to me. Don't take that too far. It's a euphemism. But she's saying, be God to me. She's saying, hey, would you be what God's supposed to be? Would you be the loving expression of God to me? Ruth has been the loving expression of God to Naomi. And she's saying, Boaz, be the loving expression of God to me. It's not enough to tell someone, hey, I hope God takes care of you. It's not enough to say, hey, I'll be praying for you. I hope you make it and God will protect you. We have to be a people who will say, hey, maybe God wants to use me and maybe God sovereignly put me in your life to be a tangible expression of God's love. And she's saying it's not enough to just say, hey, the Lord protect me. Play your role and protect me too. Boaz, be God to me. See, James chapter 2 says this, but Ruth is the embodiment of it. Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to him, go, I wish you well, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about his physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by what I do. Let's put some of this together a little bit. How could Ruth love Naomi the way she did? I think it's this. I think while Naomi is saying this, my life is bitter, my life is over, the Lord has despised me. Ruth is saying, God is faithful, God cares, and God is for you, and God is here. But she never says to Naomi, hey, Naomi, life's hard, suck it up. She doesn't say, hey, Naomi, life is hard, deal with it. She doesn't say, Naomi, life is hard, believe your God. She doesn't say any of those things. Instead, she just lives the love of God out to her. So Naomi receives that God is faithful because Ruth is faithful. Naomi receives that God cares because Ruth cares. Naomi receives that God is present because Ruth is present. Naomi receives that God chipping away at the heart. See, Naomi had her heart melted, not really by the love of Ruth, but by the love of God through Ruth. The only way Ruth could love that way was because she knew God was faithful. So because she knew God was faithful, she could love in a faithful way. Because she knew God cared about her, she could care for her in a caring way. Because she knew that God was present in her life, she could be present and bring the presence of God into Naomi's life. It's not good enough to just say, hey, God, take care of you. Naomi, if she has heard from Ruth, God, take care of you, it does nothing. But because Ruth loved her in a very expressive way, in a very tangible way, it chipped away and made Naomi's heart soft. God wants us to love in the way he loves. He wants us to care in the way that he cares, in a very tangible way. We do this sometimes saying, hey, I'll be praying for you. And you know what? Honestly, when we say that, we usually don't even pray. Sometimes we just say it because it's like the nice thing to say, and we probably mean it when we say it, but oftentimes we go home, we completely forget about it. The reality is we need to be stepping into people's lives. And we need to be caring for them regardless of what may happen to us. I'm not looking for Naomi to repay me, Ruth says. I'm looking for the Lord to repay me. And the Lord does repay her through Boaz. But what happens is we have to love the way we know we're loved by God. I'm going to give you two pictures. Here's the first one. There's a story told about a little girl named Mary. Her dad was tucking her in for bed. And so, read books, tucked her into bed, turned the lights off. And as the father is walking out the door, Mary says, "Daddy." He's like, "What, Mary?" "Daddy, don't leave." "Well, why, Mary?" "Well, because there's monsters. There's monsters in the closet. There's monsters under my bed. Don't leave." The dad says, "Mary, there's no monsters in the closet. There's no monsters under the bed." And he goes and he turns on the light and he takes her out of bed and opens the closet. "There's no monsters here." And then goes to the bed and lifts up the skirt and says, "There's no monsters here. You're fine. There's no monsters here. But if you feel like there are, just cry out to Jesus and ask him to come in and meet you. He'll take care of you." With that, he tucks her back in, turns off the light, and walks downstairs. A few minutes go by, and Mary yells, "Daddy!" Comes up the stairs. He's like, "Mary, what's going on?" "There's monsters in the closet." "Mary, we've already been through this. There's no monsters in the closet." He turns on the light, goes through the whole thing again. "See, there's no monsters here. They're not under the bed. There's nothing here. But if you get scared again, cry out to Jesus. He will take care of you. Don't cry out to me, cry out to Jesus." Turns off the light, goes back downstairs. This repeats 3 or 4 times. The last time he goes up, they go through the whole process again. And he says, "Mary, just pray to Jesus." And Mary says back, "Daddy, I want someone with skin on it. I want someone with skin on it. You tell me to pray to Jesus. I can't see him, but I can see you. I want someone with skin on it." In a sense, she's saying, be the demonstration of God's protection for me. In many regards, we are walking around Jesus with skin on. The Holy Spirit is within us. And what keeps us from moving into people's lives and helping them oftentimes is fear of saying, what could I possibly bring? What you and I bring is the very presence of God. We bring the very presence of God in every moment, and we make God visible through the way that we act and the way that we respond. And so when someone believes that God is not faithful, if you are faithful, all of a sudden they can look and go, "Oh, God's faithful because I see it in you." When someone's doubting that God cares, they look at you and say, "Okay, the way you're caring for me, I can see God cares because I can see it through you." We have to be Jesus with skin on because that's what we are. And if we just say, "Hey, I'll pray for you," if we just say, "Hey, God will take care of you," then we're not living out who God made us to be, and we're not really believing what dwells within us. The Holy Spirit dwells within us, and we are bringing a representation of who God is for a person who just can't see it. Naomi, because of life, couldn't see it. But because of who Ruth was, she began to see it. And what Ruth is saying to Boaz is, "Boaz, don't tell me God take care of me. Don't tell me he's got me. Spread the garment of your wing over me because you're a kinsman redeemer." In what ways is God calling us to actually step into people's lives and into the pain and into the struggles, even if it costs us something? Don't live in looking from a perspective of what I see fit. Live from a perspective of what does he see fit. And through that, how does he want us to display and demonstrate who God is? Now, how do you do that? Some of you have heard this word picture the Lord gave me years ago. But this word picture, I think, really describes it. I was praying and I was asking God, like, what do you want to communicate to me? And as I was praying and asking, what do you want to communicate to me, I saw a picture in my mind. I saw a basin is what I saw. And I saw a cup inside the basin. And I saw a faucet, of running water going into the basin. And as I see that, I felt like the Lord was telling me, like, that basin, I want you to look at it, that basin's the world. And that faucet and that water, that's me. And the water is going into the basin. And it is impacting and affecting the basin. It's always doing that because it's always running. It's always affecting it. And as it's always affecting it, what happens is I'm always impacting and I'm always affecting and I'm always present in the world. I'm always doing something in the world. That cup you see in there, that cup is you. And that cup, I want that cup to come under the stream. Come on the stream and draw from me. I want you to draw from me. And as you draw from me, as you get filled up from me, here's the thing. There's a couple of different ways that you can respond to that. And I want to make sure you don't respond some common ways. Some people get filled up. And when they get filled up, they get what they want from the Lord, and they go and they leave the presence of God and just kind of sit. And as they just kind of sit, what happens is over time, water begins to evaporate, and they start to lose their sense of closeness to me. I'm still there, but their sense of closeness and sense of filling is being lost as they kind of just sit out here. And what they do is they come back and forth between the stream and away, and they just interact with me that way. Coming on the stream, getting a little bit depleted, coming back and refilling, getting a little bit depleted, and back and forth. It's like, great, don't be like that. Okay. So, but I also don't want you to be another type. There's another type where they come and they get filled up. And they got all these things from me. And then they leave and like, okay, I got all this from God. Where am I going to give it? Who needs it? Who needs this? Somebody needs this. And when they find that person, then they just do this. And they throw it all over them. It doesn't really feel that good to the person receiving it. But it feels really good to us. Like, look what I just did. We feel really good about what we did because we got something from God and we just threw it all over them, and we don't really care how it impacted them. We feel good about ourselves, and the other person will go, what was that? There's a third type, which is the cup that stays and never leaves. Because if a cup stays and it never leaves, then it will fill up and then it will begin to overflow. And when it begins to overflow, what will happen is this faucet that's affecting the world is now doing it through the cup. It goes into the cup and overflows out of the cup. And the cup doesn't go looking for someone to put it on. The cup stays in the presence of God and allows God to flow out. Now here's the difference. God is always impacting and affecting the world. Is he doing it through you or because of you? See, there's a pride aspect of because of me. See, I got something from God. He needs me here. I gotta go do something. And out of pride, we're like, look what he's doing because of me. More people need to be like me. If more people were doing stuff like me, like, man, we're making some changes around here. God be showing up and people be getting saved because of me. We need more of me. It's a pride thing. What he really invites us to do is to stay here and let him work through us. Now, when you begin to stay here and let God work through us, some parts of staying here in the presence of God and letting God work through us is being a Ruth instead of an Orpah. See, Ruth said, God, you placed me here. You placed me in this relationship. You placed me in this relationship when I married my husband, who is the son of Naomi. He died, but you still placed me in Naomi's life. So she stayed. And staying where God had placed her, and staying in relationship with God, saying, your God's going to be my God. As she stayed there, the Lord is filling her up. And out of that, God begins to flow out of her. Why does she go to the field to get food? Because she's staying in the presence of God and staying in the relationship she's in. She's like, you know what? I know God cares about me, and I know you can't see it right now, but I'm going to go get us some food. And so it just starts to flow out. And the faithfulness of God begins to be seen through Ruth to Naomi, because she's staying in the presence of the Lord, and God begins to work through her. Naomi sees God cares, that God provides, that God protects, and God does all of these things, and it melts her heart. Don't take a message like this and say, I'm going to go get my cup and I'm going to throw over people. You stay in the presence of God and let him work in your heart, and he will show you how he wants to display himself through you to other people. We don't do things for God. We do things that God invites us into that he's already doing. And that means that in the places of life that we're in, as we stay abiding in him, he'll flow out. And this is what we're looking for. If you want to live out James and what it's saying is, it's not good enough to say, hey, be fed and be warm. No, you got to do something. But what are you doing is, what is God putting in your heart to respond to them in the spot that you're in? People are hurting. Don't walk away from them because they are. And people are hurting. How does God want to show up in their life? Maybe through you. And people are hurting, and the only way that you can do that is to remain in the presence of God so you don't become bitter. And you look for God to repay you instead of them repay you. If you're looking for God to repay you, you're staying in this place with this cup and saying, hey, I'm staying here in your presence and you're going to repay me. I'm not depleted, even though she's taking a lot from me right now. Because I'm not looking for her to fill my cup. I'm looking for you to fill my cup. And as long as you're looking for the Lord to fill your cup instead of someone else to fill your cup, then what will happen is you'll stay in a place of peace instead of bitterness. If you stay in a place of peace instead of bitterness, then the love of the Lord is going to flow out and people will be changed. See, it's still always about abiding in the Lord and abiding in his love that he has for us. And if I know how much he loves me, then I'll love other people. You've probably heard me say this phrase before, but I'm going to say it again. If you know who he is, you're abiding. I know who he is. If I know who he is, then I'm going to know who I am. See, knowing him tells me who my identity is and know who I am. If I know who I am in light of who he is, then it's going to affect the way that I live. It's going to affect the way I respond to people. Now, if it affects the way I respond to people, if it governs the way I'm caring for people, if it's governing all of my relationships, then what happens is through that, then people will know who I am. And if they know who I am, they should know who he is. And this is what happens to Naomi through Ruth. And God takes care of her. Boaz marries Ruth. Ruth has a child. And Ruth is placed in the line of the king. David will come through that line, and Jesus will come through that line too. Does God take care of Ruth? Oh, yeah. But she's looking for God to repay her instead of Naomi. I pray the same for myself, for all of us. And I know when people are hurting, they can bite. Love them in the midst of the biting. And the only way to do that is to know that the Lord loves you. Let me pray for us. Jesus, thank you for today. Thank you love us. Thank you care about us. Even when we can't see it. Some of us in this room are a Naomi right now, and we just can't see you. We want to. But life's been hard. And for those of us who have had a hard time seeing you, would you break in? Would you soften our hearts? Would you help us to see you again and to see you afresh? And some of us are a Ruth to a Naomi right now. God, would you help us to look for you to repay us instead of the people we're serving? Would you help us to connect with you and to sit with you and to be in your presence so that your love would flow out of us? Would you fill us up and would you flow through us? Would you fill us up and would you carry your very presence out of us into the lives of people around us? And thank you that we can trust you to protect us. You're faithful, you do care, and you're present. Open our eyes to the love you have for us. We love the way you do. In Jesus' name, amen.